What if the secrets to Earth's past and even its future are buried beneath the windswept landscapes of Patagonia? For millennia, massive creatures ruled this land, then vanished completely, without warning. Saber-toothed predators, mammals the size of vans, ancient grazers that had roamed these plains for thousands of years, and then, suddenly, they were gone. Can science really explain what happened to them? Or are there mysteries here, too vast, too ancient, too strange to fully understand? Prepare to have your view of our prehistoric world transformed. This is the Forgotten File, where history's lost truths are pulled from the past and reopened. Let's begin with the world we once lost. Welcome to Patagonia, 20,000 years ago. Long before cities, agriculture, or writing, when the Ice Age still gripped the planet, this southern edge of the world looked dramatically different. Glaciers crowned the mountains, ancient forests lined the valleys, massive rivers fed grasslands that stretched for miles, and across them walked giants, strange ones. Let's start with one of the strangest of all, the giant ground sloth. This wasn't some slow-moving tree dweller. This was a behemoth, 20 feet from claw to shoulder. Its limbs were the size of tree trunks, its claws like butcher knives, and when it stood, it looked you in the eye. The sloth wasn't fast, but if you threatened it, it didn't need to be. It could crush, it could hold, and it never ever forgot who wandered into its forest. Then there was the cat, Smilodon, a saber-toothed predator with fangs that curved down from its skull like twin blades. Unlike today's big cats, Smilodon was short, muscular, and built for ambush. It didn't chase, it waited, and when it struck, it did so with precision. In the bones of ground sloths, scientists have found saber punctures near the spine, kill shots, delivered fast. The perfect hunter for the perfect prey. But they weren't alone. There was Macrauchenia, a grazing mammal with the body of a camel, a long, bendable neck, and possibly a small trunk. It's not closely related to anything alive today. A strange design, and a peaceful one, like a zebra invented by evolution, then cut loose in time. And then there were the tanks, Glyptodon, an herbivore built like a fortress. Imagine an armadillo the size of a car, covered in fused plates and weaponized with a heavy spiked tail. Glyptodon could hold its own, and predators, Smilodon included, thought twice before testing that armor. Together, these animals shaped Patagonia's prehistoric world. They were its architects, its gardeners, and its rulers. But behind them was something even more powerful: the land. Patagonia back then was a canvas of extremes, dense with low forests, rich with water, and blanketed in wide, cold winters. Life was hard, but stable. These animals had adapted over hundreds of thousands of years. Their rhythm was the rhythm of the seasons: migration, grazing, birthing, resting, until one season never ended, and some animals never came back because something was building over those glacial steppes. Evidence comes slowly, first in the bones. Roughly 13,000 years ago, the fossil record begins to shift. Fewer juveniles, less diversity. One species gone, then another, then half a dozen, then silence. By 10,000 years ago, the rich empire of Patagonia's megafauna had collapsed. Gone. Some called it the Ice Age cleanup, a natural extinction. Others weren't so sure because the speed of the disappearance doesn't look natural. It looks intentional, sudden, and almost surgical. That mass extinction wasn't just in Patagonia, it happened all over the world. But Patagonia felt it hardest of all. Up to 75% of large mammal species disappeared forever. So now comes the question that defines this entire mystery. What happened? What force could erase such dominant creatures overnight? Could climate do it? Could humans be responsible? Could disease, younger than civilization, have burned through these herds and left no trace? The truth is unsettling. Because even today, with all our tools and techniques, we don't fully know. But we're beginning to see pieces, patterns beneath the soil, stories carved into bone, fossils that seem to say in silence, you think you're safe in your time, but time is what erases kings. In the next chapter of The Forgotten File, we step into the extinction itself, the warming world, the rising waters, the strange alignment between the arrival of the first humans and the final days of Patagonia's giants. Was it coincidence or consequence? Because if it happened once, it could happen again. This file is still open. What force could silence an entire world of giants? Animals that towered over predators, herds that stretched for miles, creatures that had ruled undisputed for millions of years, gone in what amounts to a geological heartbeat. This is Patagonia's great mystery. Because while extinction is always a part of nature, this one came like a blade, swift, sudden, personal. Welcome back to The Forgotten File, where lost histories resurface and extinction is never just the end. Let's return to the Ice Age, specifically the moment it began to end. Roughly 13,000 years ago, Earth started warming. Not slowly, but fast. The glaciers receded, storm systems shifted, coastlines collapsed into new shapes, and rivers surged with meltwater. Patagonia, once fed by cold fronts and glacial rains, began to dry. Lakes evaporated, grasslands burned, and species not built to adapt began to vanish. To be clear, extinction wasn't new. Throughout Earth's history, species come and go. Some lasted millions of years. Others melted into fossilization nearly as fast as they arrived. But this time, it was different. Because it didn't just affect one creature, it took entire ecosystems. From towering sloths to saber-toothed cats, from burrowing grazers to armored titans like the Glyptodon. The cast of Patagonia's great wilderness fell like dominoes. But the real horror is the speed. This extinction didn't take thousands of years. It may have taken hundreds. So what changed? Let's talk theories. The first is climate. As the Ice Age ended, Patagonia's environment transformed violently. Tundras collapsed into scrubland. Forests moved like tides, retreating north, leaving barren ground behind. Water vanished. Food chains broke. The great sloths and horses and camel-like Macrauchenia lost their grazing paths. And starvation is quiet. It doesn't appear in fossils. It steals from the young first, the calves, the cubs, while the adults struggle to migrate farther and farther to find nothing. It's easy to picture a world ending in fire. But this one ended in hunger. Now that alone might explain the extinction, but there's a timing problem. Because right as climate was tipping Patagonia into chaos, something else arrived. Humans. Archaeologists estimate that the first hunter-gatherers reached southern Patagonia by 14,000 years ago, or sooner. They came with spears, tools, fire, and everything about them was fast. They were not invaders. They were survivors. But they were dealing with a new ecosystem, full of slow-moving, unafraid giants who had never seen a two-legged predator before. The result? The overkill hypothesis. The idea that humanity, eager for meat, leather, fuel, hunted giant fauna at such rapid rates that these creatures couldn't reproduce fast enough to keep up. It's controversial. Some scientists dismiss it outright. Others see patterns that are hard to ignore. Mammoths in North America vanished soon after humans arrived. Ground sloths in the Caribbean suffered the same fate. And in Patagonia, the final signs of megafauna overlapped directly with early human encampments. But the smoking gun? Still missing. Not enough kill sites, not enough cut marks on bones. If humans wiped them out, they were efficient and perhaps subtle. Still, the footprints line up. In caves, humans left tools beside sloth bones, spears beside glyptodon shell fragments, fire pits in the same sediment as one of the youngest smilodon skeletons ever found. But even that may not be the whole story, because there's a third theory, almost never in the headlines, and it's terrifying: disease. What if it wasn't just humans? What if it wasn't just heat or hunger? What if, as humans moved across continents, they didn't come alone? The path of human expansion may have carried novel bacteria or viruses, pathogens that megafauna had never encountered. No resistance, no immunity, just fever, collapse, and silence. If a deadly infection made the leap from humans to wildlife, or from domesticated animals to wild herds, it could have moved faster than hunters and killed more efficiently. The trouble is, disease rarely fossilizes. It kills soft tissue. It ravages from within and leaves bones intact, sometimes untouched, which is why we'll probably never be able to prove it. But the pattern is there. First food stress, then climate instability, then hunters, then nothing. One theory is rarely enough, but together, all of them may have added just enough pressure to break the Ice Age giants. This is called extinction synergy. A domino effect. No one bullet, just every chamber firing at once, a perfect storm where the past tore itself apart. And what about the survivors? Smaller, faster, more adaptable animals lived on. Foxes, rodents, birds, species that could find cover, switch diets, breed quickly. But the giants, the beauty of Patagonia in its prime, were lost. And here's the deepest part of the mystery. They vanished so completely, so cleanly, that for centuries we barely knew they existed, until we found bones, until we dug up skin, until we opened the caves. Now Patagonia's silence speaks loudly, and it says, nature doesn't have favorites, it only has consequences. In the next chapter of The Forgotten File, we look at how science is beginning to pull truth from these ruins, with tools unimagined even 50 years ago. Genetic sequencing, radiocarbon dating, machines that pull history from a fleck of skin or thread of hair. And we'll visit one of the strangest fossil sites in the world, the cave of the Melodon, where hair, dung, and skin of a long-dead beast sit frozen, like it never left. If extinction was the question, maybe that cave holds the start of an answer. This file isn't closed, just colder than we thought. The fossils told us what existed. The extinction shocked us with what was lost. Now comes the deeper question: why? Records from the past are quiet, but science doesn't need noise. It needs evidence. And just beneath Patagonia's skin, we're starting to find it. This is The Forgotten File, the place where lost histories are reopened through dirt, bone, and data. Let's break down what we've learned and what we still don't know. There are three leading theories that dominate the extinction conversation, each with evidence, gaps, and controversy. It's not just a debate of climate versus humans. It's more like a forensic case with three culprits and one silent victim. Let us start with the one that has always been the easiest to blame: climate change. Roughly 13,000 years ago, the world was changing fast. The Ice Age was in retreat. Glaciers were melting, lakes were evaporating, ocean currents were shifting, rainfall patterns moved, grasslands vanished almost overnight. Patagonia, once lush and generous, began to dry. The change wasn't gradual, it was sudden, sharp, brutal. Large herbivores couldn't migrate fast enough, and their predators, like Smilodon, lost their food supply. Paleobotanical data, pollen samples locked in sediment, show a real transition from diverse grass species to scrubby desert-like plants. Not extinction, but stress. And when ecosystems are stressed, ecosystems fall. But is this alone enough to wipe out massive creatures across an entire continent? Some scientists say yes, but there's something missing: the timing. Because while the climate shifted gradually, the extinction didn't. It was fast. It showed up in the bones. It doesn't look like slow starvation or migration failure. It looks sharp, almost surgical. Which brings us to theory 2, the human element, officially called the overkill hypothesis. Around the time these megafauna begin vanishing from the fossil record, humans step onto the scene. They were hunter-gatherers, fast-moving nomadic groups, armed with stone tools, fire and adaptability. They weren't many, but they were efficient. They also weren't predators in the traditional sense. They weren't competing with Smilodon or hunting Glyptodon regularly, but they were opportunists. And when a species has never seen a human before, it doesn't know to hide. That's a dangerous advantage. Patagonia's animal life evolved differently than Africa or Eurasia. It lacked significant predator pressure from upright bipeds, which meant humans arrived in a world that didn't fear them. There's good fossil evidence of butchering. Giant sloth bones showing cut marks, Glyptodon shells broken open like prehistoric coconuts, human camps built next to megafauna kill sites, fire pits next to bone piles, and yet, here's the counter-argument. If overhunting caused extinction, where's the bloodbath? Where are the widespread kill sites? Where are the millions of sloths and cats and camel-like grazers with spear marks? That's the part the theory struggles with, because while humans definitely hunted, it's unclear if they hunted enough to wipe out every large species across 2 continents. Unless hunting wasn't the only thing they brought. Which brings us to theory 3, the quietest and maybe the scariest. Disease. There's no direct evidence here, but it's a theory gaining traction, not because of what we see, but because of what we don't. When humans migrate, they bring more than tools. They bring microbes, viruses, bacteria, parasites. Elevated exposure to pathogens can cause cascading effects, wiping out weaker members of a population, lowering fertility rates, and opening the door to ecological collapse. And imagine this: a virus moves through a herd of camel-like macrocenia. It spreads silently. By the time symptoms show, it's already passed to the next 10 animals. Within a generation, birth rates plummet. Within 2, the herd declines. Within 5, extinction. But here's what's terrifying. This kind of collapse wouldn't leave a clear record. No trauma in the bones, no mass grave, just no more bones at all. Some researchers suggest the disease could have become with companion animals, like dogs, or through water contamination from small mobile human groups. It's unproven, but it makes sense, because this extinction didn't leave behind a war zone. It left behind an absence. All 3 theories have holes: climate, humans, disease. None answers every question on its own. But what happens when they work together? It's called extinction synergy. Imagine a system already weakened by climate stress, droughts, failing crops, shifting herds. Now introduce small-scale hunting, removing key matriarchs, alpha males, nursing mothers. Then add sudden disease, a virus creeping undetected across species unprepared. Suddenly everything falls apart faster than any model predicts. It wasn't just one thing, it was all of them, in the right order, at the wrong time. And that brings us to something modern science can answer clearly. We know when it happened. Thanks to modern dating technology, like radiocarbon analysis and uranium-thorium dating, we've narrowed the extinction window to just a few thousand years, and in some regions of Patagonia, just a few hundred. That precision has helped scientists rule out some scattered theories and connect previously unrelated ones. But now, we turn the corner, because while fossils give us absence, genes give us story. In 1995, researchers sequenced the first ancient DNA from a Glyptodon fragment pulled from Patagonia. Since then, we've extracted mitochondrial DNA from dozens more, and they're telling us how these animals lived, how their populations expanded, how they collapsed. DNA is showing patterns that support the overkill hypothesis, and others that suggest dying ecosystems. In some cases, genetics reveal long-term declines that began before humans arrived, suggesting climate may have kicked off the collapse. The more we study, the more we realize these animals didn't vanish overnight. They survived until they couldn't anymore. And nowhere exposes that fragility better than one cave. A cave with giant sloth skin still intact, hair, dung, even footprints. It's called La Cueva del Milodon, an entrance into the literal past. In the next part of the Forgotten File, we descend into that cave, and through it into the life and unnatural stillness of Patagonia's final giants. What still lies preserved in those walls is one of the biggest keys we have, not just to how they died, but what made them live so long in the first place. The file is still open. Not all fossils are bone, and not all extinction stories are silent. Sometimes answers are sealed in airtight caves, hidden behind fallen rocks, waiting for the right hands to pull them loose. And sometimes they are soft, still leathery, still hairy, still holding the scent of animals gone for 12,000 years. Welcome back to the Forgotten File, where history's leftovers still breathe through the cracks. Let us descend into Patagonia's most haunted archive, a cave that kept its dead intact longer than anyone thought possible. This is La Cueva del Milodon, and it changed everything. Tucked into the base of a cliff in southern Chile, at the edge of the Ultima Esperanza Sound, lies a cave more than 650 feet deep. To an outsider, it looks like erosion, a hollowing from wind and ice. But for scientists, it's a minefield of clues. This cave wasn't just used by animals, it was lived in, and within its layers of sediment, it holds the preserved remains of one of Patagonia's most famous creatures, El Milodon, the giant ground sloth. Almost everything we know about this behemoth today began here. In 1895, the cave shocked the world. A German explorer named Hermann Eberhard stumbled across a hide, still intact, still soft, still textured. It looked like hardened leather, scaled and stretched, and for days, no one believed it wasn't from a living creature. Because creatures like that were supposed to be dust by now, but it was real, and it was thousands of years old. Since then, scientists have excavated not just bones, but dung, hair, tendons, and even claw tips from the chamber. Not fossilized, preserved, frozen in time. That moment, the discovery of soft tissue, changed paleontology forever. Because now, the story wasn't just skeletal, it was genetic. Researchers began pulling DNA from the remains, mitochondrial strands still clinging to cells, isotopic profiles from ancient dung telling us what it ate, season by season. And suddenly the creature wasn't just a mystery, it was a case file that could be opened and read. How it moved, how it migrated, what it chewed, what it avoided, what kinds of bacteria lived in its gut. This cave introduced a new era, ancient biochemistry, and it's not just the Milodon. In nearby sites across Patagonia, remains from saber-toothed cats, macrauchenias, prehistoric horses and birds have been studied using cutting-edge technology. Collagen analysis shows diet stress. Tooth wear patterns track migration. Carbon dating outlines extinction windows with stunning clarity. We're even seeing signs of coexistence between humans and these animals inside these caves. Charcoal layers from fire pits, stone tools, bone fractures consistent with butchering. This is no longer theory, it's evidence. And modern science is letting us reconstruct entire days in the life of creatures dead for 10,000 years. Let's unpack a few of these powerful tools. Radiocarbon dating, the foundation. It tells us when something lived by measuring the carbon-14 decay in bones or other organic materials. It's how we narrow the extinction of giant sloths, not to millennia, but sometimes to within a human generation. DNA extraction, the revolution. It allows scientists to construct family trees, population structures, and even disease profiles. In Patagonia, DNA evidence suggests that Milodons were already isolated into smaller breeding populations before extinction, a possible red flag for species collapse. Then comes paleoproteomics, ultra-sensitive protein analysis that works even when DNA doesn't. Tiny molecules in fossilized tissues give us insight into evolution, immunity, and even how stress affected these animals systemically over generations. Finally, there's sedimentary ancient DNA, or SEDA DNA. This is where science gets sci-fi. We can now extract genetic material from soil samples, reading not just what died there, but what walked across a patch of earth thousands of years ago. Traces from their fur, skin cells, droppings, molecules shed unknowingly into the dirt. In one rock shelter in Argentina, cedar DNA confirmed the presence of both a human population and two extinct species living simultaneously within the same site. And that raises huge consequences, because if human footprints overlap directly with the last DNA of Megafauna, then coincidence becomes confrontation. So where does it leave us? Are we any closer to understanding what truly happened to these lost giants? Yes and no. The data points are clearer. The extinction timeline is sharper. The pathway is visible. A blend of rapid climate destabilization, human migration, resource stress, and possibly an invisible pathogen or two. But resolution? That remains unfinished. Because no science can fully recreate what it felt like as the last sloth watched its calf collapse and ran out of forest to run to. No carbon reading can tell us what a Smilodon mother did the night her hunting ground went dry. No isotope will explain what it meant to be watched for the first time by upright predators holding tools and fire and quiet intent. The mystery of Patagonia isn't just biological, it's emotional, it's personal. And in that cave, under that kill layer, inside that hide so bizarrely preserved, we're not just seeing extinction, we're seeing a history that wants to be remembered, sometimes loudly, sometimes in whispers, but always waiting. And here's why it matters. Because what we find in those caves isn't just about the past. It's about right now. Species on our Earth are vanishing at faster rates than ever before. All the same warning signs are here. Shifting climates, habitat loss, overheating ecosystems. We've just traded spears for systems. If we let Patagonia's story end only in a textbook, we've missed the message entirely. In the final chapter of The Forgotten File, we explore just that, the ripple effect of extinction. What we lose when giants vanish, how nature reacts when balance is destroyed, and why the footprint of a sloth in a cave should still move us 12,000 years later, because old bones are not always silent. Sometimes they're begging us to listen. This file isn't closed, it's evolving. The last ground sloth didn't roar, the last saber-toothed cat didn't charge, the last glyptodon didn't roll into battle. Extinction isn't loud, it's quiet, slow, personal. One calf that doesn't return, one path that no longer leads to water, one more winter that something simply doesn't survive. This is the Forgotten File, and in this final chapter we're not looking deeper into the mystery. We're looking outward at ourselves and the world we risk losing next. Because the story of Patagonia's giants isn't just an ending, it's a mirror. When megafauna were wiped from these lands 10,000 years ago, they didn't just leave behind silence. They left behind holes in ecosystems, in soil, in the rhythms of life itself. Let's start with one of the simplest truths. Big animals do big jobs. Megafauna weren't just impressive, they were architects of the land. Their heavy footsteps trampled underbrush, reducing fuel for wildfires. Their dung spread nutrients across hundreds of kilometers. Their grazing patterns shaped entire plant communities. Some even helped guide the flow of rivers and lakes through migration routes passed down for generations. And when they disappeared, The systems they upheld didn't just pause, they collapsed. Patagonia's forests changed. New plant species dominated. Large predators vanished, not just the saber-tooth, but its descendants too. Smaller mammals took over, but they couldn't do the same work. The balance was gone. This isn't ancient history. This is a lesson. Because today, our world faces another extinction event. We're living through what scientists call the sixth mass extinction. But this time, it isn't glaciers or meteors. It's us. More than 1 million species are currently at risk of extinction. That includes coral reefs, elephants, whales. Insects humans barely notice, but entire food webs depend on. And the pressures echo Patagonia's fall. Rapid climate shifts, collapsed ecosystems, the spread of disease, invasive species, and yes, overkill. We're still measuring the loss, not in bones, but in potential. We don't know what medicines we've lost in vanished plants, what genetics died out in animals we never catalogued, what balances we've tilted that cannot be righted. But Patagonia is our warning, because when the big creatures vanish, they take more than just size. We also lose pollinators, seed distributors, climate regulators, natural designers, and unlike the clues locked in caves, we can't dig these ones back up, but it's not all despair. That's the final twist in this file. Because we've also learned how resilient nature can be if given space to recover. There are science-backed cases around the world, Patagonia included, where reintroduction and rewilding efforts have begun to stitch back the damaged threads. In parts of Argentina, efforts to protect modern species like the guanaco and puma help maintain grazing and predatory balance. Conservation parks use lessons from extinction to shape sustainable landscapes, avoiding human overreach, learned the hard way. And indigenous communities in Patagonia, the Mapuche and Tehuelche, carry deep ecological knowledge and spiritual connection to the land as natural rhythms. Their voices are often missing from archaeology, but in true ecosystems, they were never silent. They worked with the land. They listened when animals were abundant, and when they left, so should we. The story of Patagonia's prehistoric world doesn't have to be a cautionary tale. It can be a blueprint, a reminder that climate isn't separate from our actions, that extinction isn't a myth from the past, and that survival, real, lasting, meaningful survival, comes not from dominance, but awareness. Every lost creature tells us something different. The ground sloth teaches us that slowness doesn't mean safety. The saber-toothed cat teaches us that strength, without adaptability, won't guarantee survival. The glyptodon teaches us that even the well-armored fall when the environment shifts beneath them. And La Cueva del Milodon reminds us that nothing we bury stays buried forever. History remembers, the earth remembers. And now, we do too. So what now? We preserve what's left. We reimagine how we live with the planet. And we decide whether our own bones will become a future file, dug up by something else, wondering why we vanished. Because the deeper you go, the more you find. Nature is not just resilient, it's a witness. In Patagonia, extinction came fast. But maybe, just maybe, if we listen, it won't come again. This file will remain open until we finally learn the lesson written in every lost footprint. This has been another case reopened on the Forgotten File. Now it's your turn. What do you think caused Patagonia's collapse? Was it humans, nature, something we haven't discovered yet? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget, if we don't study the past, we could become part of it. Subscribe for more open cases, and join us next time in the archives of the forgotten.